Go for it. Wait,
Yep.
no, I've got one important announcement that's very, very important. Congratulations, everybody. It's our second birthday. We've made it 2 years.
Okay, we will be doing the 12 pests of Christmas. We've gone a bit festive. So the course content will be about some common food pests, management of pest problems, and most importantly for a caterer, how to get rid of them. So a bit of background, integrated pest management and control are obviously an essential prerequisite of a HACCP-based food safety system. An integrated pest management system will always favour prevention rather than cure, because you don't want these pests in your kitchen in the first place. Getting rid of them can involve pest controllers having to use poisons and such like. There are various structures for integrated pest control management, and one I particularly like is something I came up with myself, and it has a nice little mnemonic of mice, is maintenance, identification and indications of pests, cleaning, and eradication and evaluation. So the background law to do with pest control is the EC retained law, Annex 2, Chapter 2 and 9, which basically requires the layout and design of any food rooms to prevent contamination. It specifically mentions screening windows and the design of windows to prevent dirt accumulation by having them slanted. You would be amazed how many kitchens are designed with flat windowsills that allows dust, flies, etc. to accumulate at window edges, both inside and outside. Pest control problems that are not under control are probably about the most likely reason to be served with a health emergency prohibition notice. A bit of background, so I do agency chefing and have been in lots and lots of kitchens and come across lots and lots of pest control problems. Most specifically, in Glasgow where I work, there was a local authority bin strike for about 10 weeks, and that led to massive rodent problems within the city. And this has happened about this year and about 2 years ago. And the last time this happened, it took the pest controllers up to a year to eradicate the problem from certain areas of the city, just because the rodents got ingrained into the environments around hospitals, hotels, restaurants, with all the waste accumulation. Checking for pests should always be part of your daily checks. It should just be part of your daily working checks in the kitchen. And any control measures in your HACCP plan should be aimed at prevention of the ingress and contamination with insects and other pests. Maintenance in a kitchen, you'd be amazed how many times I've seen maintenance done in the kitchen where your builder will just drill holes to put a new pipe in or a new appliance, and they won't gap fill, because these gaps are how rodents and other animals can get into the kitchen. Ensuring that your premises is always proofed effectively is really important. Fly screens are very easily damaged. I've walked into multiple kitchens where the fly screen is broken, so it is completely ineffective. They also need cleaning and replacement on a regular basis. They tend to be the kind of thing that is installed when a kitchen's built and kind of forgotten about. But cleaning and replacement of these are essential. to prevent ingress into the kitchen. When you're checking for gaps, this is best done from the floor level and actually physically getting down on the floor and seeing where your gaps in your kitchen are. I recently had a problem in my kitchen with mice, and we eventually found where they were coming into the kitchen, and it was only by basically me lying on the ground and finding a very small gap under a skirting board where they were gaining entry from a neighbouring premises. And that's the kind of thing that you're not going to see walking around the kitchen. This cracking photo is from a place I was working in where they've attempted their own version of insect screening. Yes, that is a net curtain pinned to the inside of a window with drawing pins. There's so many problems with this. The drawing pins could fall off and become a food hazard. There's dead insects within the screening there. It can't be effectively cleaned. I left a message with them to get this fixed. These are two types of brush strippings that you can add to bottom of doors to prevent things like rodents getting in. One is like a brush style one, and the other is more like a rubber seal. In my premises, when we had the rodent issue, we actually added these to both sides of the doors, which again discourages rodents from coming under the doors. They actually only need 5 millimeters to get through, because mice have basically very soft bodies and they can get under doors very easily. 5 millimeters is basically the width of a pencil, which is quite small. Gaps around pipes and cable entries should ideally be filled with steel wool. And this is a relatively new product in the market. Essentially, it's a normal filler, but what they've put in the filler is metal filings. And essentially, the mice and rats hate it. I guess it's a bit like putting aluminium foil on your fillings. They absolutely hate the feeling in their mouth. And this will prevent them trying to gain entry around any gaps in your building where pipes and things like that come in. This is dissimilar to other fillers that might have a bait or a poison in them. This is completely non-toxic. It's just regular silicone sealer that has metal in it. So it's perfectly okay to be used in a factory environment because it's metal detectable. So if the filler falls out and contaminates a product, it will be picked up by standard metal detection practices in factories. Other maintenance points is to ensure that your floor ceiling junctions are easy to clean and painted or in a colour that is very easy to spot evidence of pests. Paler colours are obviously easier to see smear marks from rats, mice droppings and things like that. Pests tend to like the periphery of your kitchen. That's because they're generally quite timid and like to stay in the dark and stay away from people. So this is where you're going to be wanting to look for pests in your regular checks. As part of eradicating the mice problem for my kitchen, I bought a torch. It's amazing how dark some of your little corners in your kitchen can be, and that's going to be where you're going to find your evidence of mice. That one dropping you find could be the start of a problem, and the sooner you find these problems, the far likely you are to eradicate them. So I was using a torch every day to try and work out where the ingress points were, if we still had evidence of activity. And the kind of things you're looking for are droppings, dirty smear marks. Mice and rats will climb over things, and they have generally quite dirty bellies, and they'll leave marks over pipes and when they're jumping over things. And you'd also be looking for insect eggs, cases, evidence of insects. And now we start on our 12 pests of Christmas. It's a roughly A to Z of fairly common pests you would find in the kitchen. So we'll start off with ants. They are attracted to sweet things. I once had I once had ants in a kitchen, and it was traced back to a jar of syrup that someone hadn't cleaned off properly. All it takes is one little ant to find that, and they leave a little pheromone trail, which will lead other ants to the food source. So this indicates you've probably got a cleaning issue, or you have a nest outside. The particular kitchen that I was in was surrounded by plants, bushes, had lots of open ground, so there was an ant nest outside. So we got professional help in to deal with the ant problem, and then in the kitchen, obviously you want to clean to remove any food source, and again, cleaning will also break this pheromone trail, which will stop the other ants following the trail into your kitchen. Beetles. I have come across these once or twice in kitchens. The little picture there is of a beetle of the carpet beetle type family. So they have a life cycle of larvae, which are little, slightly hairy little, almost like little caterpillars, and then these will form into beetles. Generally, they are eating crumbs, vegetable matter. So, kind of places you're going to find them in the kitchen are under your fridges, in dry food stores, eating flour and crumbs, things that have fallen off. They like to hide in dark places and walls. Normally indicates it's a cleaning issue. So killing the beetles on site and rigorous cleaning will eliminate them. In one particular kitchen, we eventually traced them to a hole in the wall. So they'd been coming in from somewhere else in the building. And we cleaned and cleaned and cleaned, couldn't work out where they were still breeding. And it was actually in the changing room. They were feeding off dirt and debris on people's shoes. And we eventually found their little larvae underneath the locker area, which is where they'd been hiding during the day. And then they would come out at night and feed on any crumbs or anything that was found. So once we eliminated that, problem goes away. Birds can easily become a food pest, generally around your waste areas. Their droppings obviously carry lots of bacteria. There was a particular case in a Glasgow hospital where they got some pigeons into a ventilation area. And this involved a fungus getting into the air conditioning and the water system. And sadly, several children died as a result of this. And this was because not adequate pest proofing was around the intakes to the ventilation system. And the birds got into a plant room, which contaminated the air conditioning and water. Birds can also carry salmonella and a form of chlamydia, which can cause a kind of respiratory illness. Generally, birds can be easily got rid of by eliminating or containing your waste better. pest controllers can also obtain licenses to shoot them if required. Typical problems would be birds, seagulls, and things like that. Cockroaches can become a problem in kitchens. They have a life cycle of eggs, nymphs, and adults. They like crumbs, vegetable matters, basically anything that's alive or been a plant or animal. They have no problems with eating feces and all sorts of horrible things. So again, this is why it's a serious problem in the kitchen, because as you can see, they carry pretty much an A to Z of pathogenic bacteria. I've come across cockroaches only once in my career, and that was caused, no, actually twice. Once in a case of pineapples from Costa Rica, and I was in the middle of a field in Perthshire, and a giant bright green, lime green cockroach jumped out the case of pineapples and scuttled across the field. Don't think it would have become a problem, because I don't think Costa Rican cockroaches are used to the UK climate. The other time was a batch of coffee beans was contaminated with cockroaches, and it led to a cafe being infested with them, which meant it had to be sealed, fumigated, cleaned down, and eventually the cockroaches were eradicated. I was talking with my pest controller about cockroaches, and they're one of the pests that can spread rather easily between premises. So if you have a cockroach problem, there's a possibility it's not come from you. It could be if there's a neighbouring kitchen, they may have a bigger problem than you do. So it's generally not confined to you. In residential properties as well, they can very easily spread between flats and things like that. So you may need to look into neighbouring properties if you cannot eliminate a cockroach problem. Cats and dogs can be a pest in kitchen areas. They carry various bacteria on their coats and mouths. Steve did a bit on one of the last presentations on CPD about toxic plasmosis, which can cause a lot of illness and the life cycle of the protozoa in cats. And this is the reason that they're not permitted in food rooms at all. So they should be kept out of food rooms. In restaurants and pubs where dogs are welcome, care should be given to avoid cross-contamination. You've got various ways that could get into food areas. You know, you've got dog bowls, cleaning materials used for tables and mops and things like that. You're going to want to ensure that these are completely separate from anything that's used within the kitchen area. Flies in a kitchen, a pretty common pest. Fruit flies generally indicate that you've got some sort of off produce attracting them. Larger flies generally is a problem with cleaning or waste issues. I've come across fruit flies various times during the agency, and it's always someone not properly stock controlling vegetables, onions, things like that. Had a case in one kitchen where they had a fly problem but couldn't work out where it was coming from. The entire kitchen had been cleaned, and it was traced to a small waste gully. Had some waste vegetable material kind of caught in the drain, and there was flies and maggots in the drain area. And it can also indicate that you have dead mice or rats somewhere in the kitchen, because obviously when you're baiting mice, generally the poison will kill them, but they will kill them somewhere away from the kitchen. So if they've crawled in behind a wall or whatever like that, you may have a dead rodent somewhere within your kitchen. Fly insecticutors, while they're in most kitchens, are actually of very limited effectiveness. Flies generally don't fly into them, and when they do, if it's the electric type, they get zapped, and then the fly will fly out and can cause a contamination problem within your kitchen, which is why they should always be away from food areas, over doors, or whatever like that. And with flies, obviously prevention is better than cure, so you really want to avoid them getting into your kitchen in the first place by, again, having the appropriate screening over doors and things like that, and keeping food covered to avoid contamination. I found this fantastic statistic for mice. 2 mice given unlimited food and resources, 2 mice can become 2,000 mice in 1 calendar year, which is kind of horrific. And you can see why mice problems can become established very quickly. They will pretty much eat anything, to food scraps on the floor. I've seen them eat insulation on the back of fridges. They literally will eat anything. The signs of mice are dropping, dirty marks from their bellies on things, and evidence of bait being eaten in a bait station. So once you've identified a mice issue, you need to contact your pest controller immediately. Generally, these black boxes in the kitchen will contain a bait, which is just a food source. Doesn't contain any poison normally, because they are prohibited from permanently baiting these stations with poison to prevent there being too much poison being used in the environment. And also, if you're continually dosing mice with poison, they will become immune to it. So what they'll do is they'll swap out the bait for a poison, which is typically either works as a neurotoxin or an anticoagulant, which causes the mice to bleed out. Traps can be used so long as they are frequently checked for humane reasons. Most pest controllers won't actually bait a trap. They prefer to use what's called blunder traps. So mice will tend to work around the outside of kitchens or food rooms or dry stores. So they'll typically just put a trap in an area where a mice will travel, and it just blunders over it and snap, and it will catch the mice. Sticky traps can be used in extreme circumstances. There are very different legislation in the 4 nations in the UK. In Scotland, we are currently have legislation going through to ban their use. There are controls over their use in England, and it varies elsewhere as well. They are exceptionally cruel, because what these sticky traps rely on is the mice coming along and the hairs on their feet and their belly get stuck to the gel on the sticky trap. And what they'll do is they'll squeak, and what this does is attracts other mice who then get stuck on the trap. So you can obviously imagine that's quite a cruel method. So it relies on them being dispatched very quickly to avoid causing undue pain and suffering. Here we have some pictures. So the one on my left is evidence of quite a bad mice infestation. You'd notice there's different sizes of droppings. This particular premise had baby mice and adult mice in it, so they're breeding within this facility, and that's evidenced by the different sizes of droppings. notice there's multiple bait stations around there, so they've been trying the bait. This was before the bait was swapped for poison. So when they do swap it for poison, it will have a label on it like so, which will state what the type of poison in use is. And I believe that is a legal requirement so that the poisons are controlled and they know what's being used in that particular premises, and they will have a map of where these poisons are being used. And generally, they are not permitted to leave these poisons outside for extended periods of time to avoid other species being accidentally poisoned by these. And then on the photo on the right, we have a type of sticky trap and just a regular mouse trap. Evidence of mice can be found on food premises. Here, evidence was actually found on a food contact surface. This would be an immediate hygiene concern for an EHO or EHP. At one point in Glasgow 2 months ago, there was 5 premises within a 2-mile radius served with health improvement notices within 1 calendar week, and it was all to do with mice problems after the bin strike. So what these premises had to do was close, have immediate deep cleaning. The pest control companies changed from a monthly checkup visit to, in some cases, a daily visit before opening. And the premises had to evidence that there was no sign of pests for 3 consecutive days before they were allowed to reopen again. And that's how seriously the environmental health were taking it, because it was such a concern. Rats have a very quick life cycle. They can become able to breed quite quickly. Again, like mice, they will pretty much eat anything. So you'd be looking for their drop-ins, dirty marks, smear marks on your floor to wall junctions, and evidence of bait being eaten. Typically, a rat will enter a food premise for food reasons. These pictures are from a premise about 1.5 miles from my premises. This was shared on a local chef WhatsApp group. The chef found some dead rats in his kitchen. By the looks of them, they've been poisoned elsewhere, and they've come into the kitchen and died in the premise. The chef was obviously quite alarmed about this, brought it to the attention of the management, and was told to just get on with it without any cleaning or anything like that. So the chef promptly walked out and shared it on a private chef group to kind of avoid this place at all costs. And our last little pest are squirrels, which you wouldn't think would be a food pest. But I live in a city area, and we've had problems with squirrels in the past chewing our food bins. So they'll chew their way into the food bin, and then typically they will take food out of it, and then this allows other pests to come into your waste area. And they actually carry Lyme disease as well. So they are actually a potential source of ticks, which could easily bite people putting out waste. Any grey squirrels caught must be destroyed, as they're not a native species. We have also had squirrels killed in our rat stations by what they'll do is they'll crawl in and eat some of the bait and then die in there as well. And last little one is weevils, typically found in dry goods, flour, things like that. And you'll notice a little black marks or small insects in the flour. You just need to destroy the flour and also check other containers in case they have spread in between. They can be destroyed by freezing. I know some people freeze their flour, and this will actually kill the eggs within the flour and prevent weevils. Now on to the C in the MICE. So cleaning, effective cleaning is essential for the prevention and elimination of pests. Hoovering can be far more effective than sweeping to remove crumbs, and deep cleaning must be carried out on the evidence of any pest infestations. And again, for the likes of if you have a health emergency prohibition notice, your EHO or EHP will want to see evidence of a deep cleaning regime that would remove any source of contamination from the kitchen. And obviously this cleaning will ensure that any pests are discouraged from returning. As I mentioned before, on noticing that you have a problem, increasing pest control visits to weekly or several times a week will show that you have due diligence in managing the issue. Pest control officers are normally very good at establishing where your problem is coming from. It may take multiple visits to eliminate, a couple of different sources of the problem. Any cleaning should be increased to the higher intensity, even after the problem is resolved, to prevent the pest coming back. And then you should carry out any maintenance required to prevent the pests getting entry again. Any questions?
Just one thing, Duncan. You mentioned people shooting birds, and you might, well, if I can, have you heard of the CRRU UK Code of Best Practice for Rodenticides? It's a campaign for responsible rodenticide use. And that's basically come from the television presenter Chris Packham. And he's got this CRRU, that's responsible use of rodenticides to prevent non-target species such as owls being taken from things like your poisons and all the rest of it, which has caused quite a bit of a stir in the pest control industry. And I was at a British pest control seminar, and I was doing a talk there, and I hadn't realised this had come out. And basically, in my presentation, I was trying to find ways of getting the pest contractors work in small catering operations. But what I found out was that most of the industry, because of the CRRU and the reduction in the use of rodenticides, a lot of people are going over to what they call breakback traps, which I think you've also mentioned. But the problem with that for a small caterer is that when you've got to do a regular check, unless you've got a visible means of the chefs checking the base stations without opening them and getting their hands mucky, it's a bit of a problem for them.
Yeah, because what can happen with these rodenticides is the rodents can actually become bait shy. So what they'll do is they'll eat a sub-fatal dose of the poison, and then they can go away and birds can eat them, and the birds will develop a fatal dose by eating multiple mice that have only been partially poisoned.
Yeah.
And and that's why sometimes bait just won't work, because you have mice that have become bait shy, and they'll try it once, take a sub-fatal dose, and then they won't touch the bait again. So you then might have to, your pest controller might have to change the poison used if it's not effective, or use these alternative methods. Ultimately, sometimes ended up using sticky traps, which may or may not be legal within your host nation.
They've just been changing the use of sticky traps, not particularly for insects, but certainly for mammals. And there's been a lot of controversy over the last 6 weeks or so about the legality of using these in certain types of industry.
Yeah, they should never be used by a caterer themselves. It should always be on the advice of your pest controller, when perhaps other methods haven't worked.
Yeah. Anyway, good presentation. Thank you for that.
Duncan, yeah, can you hear me okay? Because I've got really bad sound here.
Yep.
You can hear me okay?
A little echo maybe, but
yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'll keep it brief. Thank you very much. Invaluable, because I'm teaching level 2 safety on Wednesday, and kind of thing to revitalise my session on pest control, which sometimes gets a bit flat. But I did one interesting point for me is with the pest control contractors ever getting to help caterers do their own pest checks and show them how to do it. And I think would be, I've not heard of a pest control contractor taking time out to show them how to do their own weekly checks, maybe because it might be regarded as rather self-defeating. But I think it would be helpful to show them how to use a torch, not being. But actually, a lot of situations, caterers can do pest checks between the pest control visits.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky that I use a very small independent pest control company, not one of these big companies. So they are genuinely invested in ensuring you don't have a problem. Whereas a lot of the bigger companies they're literally there to do the check and go. And if there's the opportunity for them to make more money by additional services, they're quite happy to do that. But providing training or showing you things is generally not within their remit or the concern at all.
Yeah, thanks for that. I do actually have a photograph by a small pest control company. And they sent me like hundreds of them and said I can use them freely. So maybe I should put together a little set of really good photos. We're always looking for photos as trainers anyway. So I'll try and dig those out and share them on the forum.
I've just sent one in the chat, David. You're more than welcome to steal it if you like. It's the old-fashioned moving the bait boxes off the floor onto a shelving whilst people are sweeping them up on the floors and then not putting it back.
Oh, yeah.
Also, if anybody's looking for any lights to be able to do pest inspections, I have acquired some absolutely fantastic pens that come with a light on the end of them, which means I can take notes and then also around the kitchen as well. So it costs about £1.20 per pen, and you get your own little marketing on there as well. I won't tell you which one it is, which company it is, but I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of them before.
David, do you want to
do
your presentation on CPD?
Fingers crossed. It's very brief, and I'm having these sound problems, but I'm going to share my screen and just see if I can this point on CPD for those of you who would like to collect your CPD. So let's see if this works. It does. Let's have a look. Let me know what you can see. Can you see the first slide there?
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to go, in that case, I'm going to go backwards to the beginning. Right, okay. So CPD is usually stands for continuing professional development, or sometimes continuous professional development. It's well defined learning activities that we all engage in as professionals to develop and enhance our abilities, and it should be a holistic approach towards enhancing your personal skills and proficiency throughout your career. Now, food safety forums are an excellent example of that, I would say. So CPD normally combines methodologies, so training courses, seminars, webinars, online learning, etc., all focused towards us improving. I just wanted to make a point about requirements. I know people might be watching this recording afterwards if they're not live, and they might be in various professional bodies, and they might be concerned about the requirements and whether our webinars count. The truth is, it's an organisation. So I can speak with confidence with my professional body, the CIH, because I helped design the scheme, that our webinars do count and our certificates do count. And what I'm going to show you in Enhanced CPD also counts. But it does vary from organisation to organisation, even from employer to employer. They might count hours or they might give points. But I think whenever we talk about CPD, it always has some kind of structure. It is not simply an hour's chit-chat, which is valuable to many of us, but I think it's difficult to count it as CPD. It needs to have professional content, and there needs to be some kind of recording or validation about that content. And of course, the Food Safety Forum that mainly Steve and Brendan run, we tend to invite people, and they're always professional. Duncan, you're no exception. And we make sure that it's validated in some way, either recorded or validated. And we follow those principles in the forum as well as other people elsewhere. So you get a certificate if you attend a live session issued by Steve and or Brendan. And then what I'm introducing is Enhanced CPD, which the forum doesn't need to validate, but it is for an additional hour if you, as an attendee, want to keep a record how you've used the content to enhance your professional development. And I've stolen this, not stolen it because I devised it, but from the CIH, who are fairly well known in CPD provision. And I'm just going to show you what we've opted in the forum to show you how you can get an extra hour. And for people, getting CPD hours is quite important, isn't it? I need to get 30 hours a year to keep my chartered status. So I'll be using tonight's session. I've spent an hour listening and contributing, and I'm going to be recording up to another hour of how I'm going to apply that to my training courses. So I'm going to be able to claim 2 hours PD for tonight. And it's not for any the reason I studied 2 hours in it. It's not trying to, get a quick fix. So for some people, it's very important for their professional body. So our Enhanced CPD, which is on a form, which I've uploaded to the forum, and it's somewhere in there, Brendan. I'm seeing if you're going to nod. That file is uploaded on the forum under Enhanced CPD. So you can download the form and use it if you wish. It covers your why you were attending the event. It covers the feedback. How did it go? It covers what you have learned. I'll tell you what mine is from tonight. It covers application, how you can apply it to your own work practice, and it includes any further development. And I've nearly written mine out now in note form, which I will then transcribe onto that form. Think about it a bit more. So my objectives were to make sure I wasn't missing anything obvious in pest control, which I don't think I am. My feedback is it was well worth my time to remind myself about the key points about pest control. Learning, I learned a very useful mnemonic, MICE, thank you. I reminded myself sectocutors have very limited use. Not even all houseflies are attracted by ultraviolet light. I learned that mice can go from 2 to 2,000 in a year, which I figured in my mind. And I thought was very useful. And I'd let myself to look for on bait stations, which I haven't done for a while. What I can apply I'll be putting all my training session on Wednesday with a new client. And I'm going to start looking at these photographs and see if I can pick out some really good photographs to illustrate on my training courses. And I'm going to claim an hour for that thinking and writing it down. And that's what we call enhanced CPD. I think we've said on our form that we don't want you to send your enhanced CPD form in. We're not going to mark it. That's your professional responsibility to say, I did spend another hour. And that's my enhanced CPD for the forum. Hope it's of help. I'll stop sharing my screen now. That was a bit of a lightning tour, not like me, is it? But
right. It's okay with you, Brendan. I've got, oh God, where are we? Yeah. I want to start sharing my screen on this one. Right, can you all see that okay?
All good.
Yep.
You've all got it? Okay, let me just get rid of my... Oh, dear. For some reason I'm... Oh, well, anyway. Can you see the full slide screen? Because I can only see my version with the things on it. So, this came out on the 24th of November, and it's an update of the old UK Hospitality Guide, which came out about 5 or 6 years ago. And that was the old version, which as soon as we came out of Brexit, that all of a sudden got taken off the smartphones and the tablets, or you could buy the written version. So the one on the right is now the UK Hospitality Catering Guide, the updated version, and you can go online and download your own PDF, or you can buy the actual paper hardbound back one. I've not seen it on any social media platforms as an app yet, although it wouldn't surprise me if one is developed. The industry guide is a well-established guide for both operators and environmental health practitioners, and it's been used for quite a few years. And this latest version covers the legislative landscape, which is being developed by our food experts group. So, in other words, as things have moved on, they've added a few. If you look up the UK Hospitality Guide, just do a Google search, and that will become the home page where you can start to download it. Now, once you've got there, you type in on resources, which is at the top of the screen with the blue arrow, and then you look for guidance. And that then comes onto the next screen once you've clicked on the guidance, and that talks about the guide itself. And in the bottom left of the screen, you can access the guide by clicking on the guide here. So what changes have been made? Well, on this latest updated version of the guide, there are 4 new sections. Food crime, surplus food donating leftover food to charity, things like food banks and all the rest of it, because there's an awful lot of that going on now with the cost of living increase and whatever. And there's a greater risk that people could be at risk of having food poisoning outbreaks, etc., etc. Freezing and defrosting of food is another section in there. And then you've got chill vacuum packed meats and shelf life. So these are all on top of what was already in the old version, and you can add to the new one. It's available electronically as a PDF to download and as a printed copy. So you can just click on the site on the web page, and the printed cost is available for £25 plus postage for UKH members and £35 postage for non-members. So if you want to order your printed copy, complete your details here. So you can download that, and it's been developed by the food industry and is recognised by the Food Standards Agency and the Food Standards Scotland in accordance with Article 8 of the retained regulations, which was the old EC stuff from 852/2004. So you can download your copy there, and you'll just download your PDF. Now, what I found out is that I tried to join the UK Hospitality as an ex-trainer, and I got an email the following day, and basically all it said was, we can only allow organisations to join, not individuals. Well, it's all right. The watch is going mad. So that's what the guide actually looks like. That's the catering guide. It's the front cover of the PDF, or there's a paperback version if you want a hard copy. There is the contents page of that, and that includes the 4 new sections as well. You've also got things like each of the sections is how to comply with the law, good practice, and in some cases, what the law itself is, what section of the law it is. But basically, if you follow all of those, and you've got a copy of those on your, I would say, have it at the front of your Safer Food Better Business, or on your HACCP, and have the front page on that paperwork. So when you get inspected by an AHO, they know that you've got a copy of that somewhere, and that your staff should be complying with it. Now, an environmental health officer, when they're doing their inspections, will normally sit and analyse the paperwork first before going into the workplace, the production area. I'm an old chef, or an ex-chef, and I always go in there first to find out what's wrong. Then I'll check up on the paperwork afterwards to see if what they've been doing matches what they've said they're going to be doing. And because when you're inspecting, you're walking on the premises, the minute you walk through that door, you can guess what's going on in the kitchen, and they are emptying the fridges, getting rid of all the evidence of stuff that they would normally, you wouldn't pick up if they read the paperwork first. There is no legal definition of what a food handler is, but for the purposes of the guide, a food handler is any person who is involved in food and handles food, whether it's open, unwrapped, or packaged. And there is guidance for the 4 categories on this UK Hospitality Guide. So you've got duties such as A, B, C, or D. So you've got people who are, give you typical job titles. An A person might be a store person, a waiting staff, or whatever. So that's the lowest. The next one will be, which would be normally be something like a level 2 food hygiene requirement. So that'd be your cook or catering supervisor or whatever. Your grade C would be unit managers, supervisors, head chefs, etc., etc. And finally, category D is people who are responsible either for multiple sites or for designing a HACCP, or being ultimately responsible for that. And these are some of the guys. You've only got to go onto the thing, download the size, and you can get hold of a copy of this yourself. I'm not doing a handout on it. It's just there, and you can download that and have a look yourself. So the use of this industry guide is optional, as I've said, but the enforcement authority may take it into account when assessing compliance with legislation. So if you've got a copy of that on your HACCP or on your Safe Food Better Business, it's belts and braces. If you're following that, what it says in that guide, you're fireproof. They also do other guides on there as well. So you can download an industry guide to acrylamide, catering and food service, or a knowledge and guide for the hospitality industry. So there's all sorts of things on there that you can get, which are guidance basically for caterers rather than manufacturers. All useful stuff. So that, if you want to write that down, that's the actual website itself, www.ukhospitality.org.uk. And that is about that. So anyone got any... share stop there. Anyone, any thoughts, questions, comments, points of view on that?
It's not
very quiet.
Not before time. It's been a long time coming, but when you read these things, you realise how much time has to be spent to get every sentence and almost every full stop right. So I think we would encourage caterers, although it's comprehensive, is look, this is the best I'm going to get, and it's not like an approved in health and safety, but it's not far off.
Oh. Exactly. You mentioned health and safety, David. There is, I think it's from Bournemouth, similar to Safer Food, Better Business. There is also a Safer, can't remember, it's SF, whatever.
Safer Workplace.
Equivalent of the Safer Food, Better Business. And it's quite a long document. And it does cover a wide range of things, from things like risk assessment, fire safety, dealing with radon even. It's got all sorts of stuff in. Although the only downside is that it doesn't prioritise what's a significant risk. So, there might be something like radon, for example, which is radioactive gases, is actually quite significant. But it doesn't differentiate between you cutting your finger on a piece of paper to someone losing a limb. But it is there, and it's freely available to download. Anyone, any thoughts, questions, comments, points of view?
No, it's fairly straightforward to me. I wanted to pick Barbara's brain just to see whether, because I wasn't sure what area she was in the country. But obviously the FSA have recently released the news about the update for schools, and they've got, 19 local authorities, essentially for an improvement of school meals and things like that, and I wasn't sure whether one was your area.
I'm in Manchester.
Oh, I don't know whether that local authority is part of that program.
Yeah.
I'm guessing if you haven't heard anything, it's not part of your...
I haven't heard anything, no. I mainly deal with the food teachers rather than, the catering facilities in schools.
Yeah, I thought as much, but I thought you'd be the most intelligent person amongst us to be able to know.
No. I'm based in the Northwest. Yeah.
I think the presentation I've just given on safer food, better business, and whatever, and that it would be useful to download that hospitality guide as well, even though they are teachers, because they might learn something from reading at least reading, skimming through the headlines, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, when I've lost my screen. When I do my food safety training, I do mention the Safer Food, Better Business. The problem that we have with teachers is that the work that they do is classroom based, whereas all the qualifications are catering based. So what I try to do is to relate the catering industry guidance that's covered in the level 2 to the classroom. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it isn't. And a lot of it is down to head teachers who are responsible for health and safety in the school, but then, particularly academies, they're a law unto themselves.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I would say, Barbara, is that if you have a copy when you're teaching, and you can tell people that exists, and then give them the link, then you've at least covered what you need to cover for them to do whatever they need to do.
Yeah.
But I would at least show them the front cover of your PDF, and then a list of contents. Just a couple of slides on a PowerPoint would be more than useful to them. They can then go away and do it themselves. Yes, David.
Barbara, can I be clear? I know we know each other. Can I be clear? Are you talking about the difficulty here is the compromise in having to prepare food in a classroom, not in a catering business?
Yeah,
but wanting to do it as well as you can, but the compromise, it's a bit like, well, it's not like catering in a field, but you know what I mean? What we say is nobody validating what's reasonable and acceptable to handle food in a classroom for the purposes of teaching it. Is there a hole there?
There is guidance from government, as in Public Health England, teaching food in these secondary schools and these primary schools, and standard 9 of that is implementing health and safety.
Right.
There's also the National Education Union, which used to be the National Union of Teachers, and they have food safety guidance. So that's the way we try and come at it. That is the, you know, where the guidance is, but it's guidance. There's no legislation.
Of course. And so so the Food Standards Agency, and I'm sure they're not listening, but the Food Standards Agency has not thought to issue a codicil to Safe Food Better Business that helps you to use it in a classroom.
No.
Well, watch this space.
Well, it's something we've discussed, you know, quite a bit, David, you know, because, yeah, we do go way back, and
not too far back, Barbara.
Not too far back, no, but, you know, I mean, we have, you know, we have worked together, and I've attended, you know, many of yours and Belinda's, you know, training. But no, I mean, when I'm talking, because I've done several over the last few weeks, when I'm talking to my teachers now, it used to be the case that we would say to them, you know, that when the children take their food out of the classroom, either they take it home or they eat it or whatever, that's fine. But nowadays, our due diligence extends to the food going home. Because if something happens in the home, they get food poisoning or anything like that, God forbid, it's never happened, then, you know, it could come back on the teacher. And I say to, you know, because they say, why do we have to have all this paperwork? And I say to them, it's because your due diligence does not end when the child takes that food home.
Let's catch up offline and see whether we can put our heads together. I'm conscious that I can put my pound after 7 o'clock. 5 till 7, we turned everything off to get our £2 out of British Gas. So,
right.
Thank
you very much, everybody.
I don't blame you.
I think Duncan's got a question before we all clock off.
It's just a quick one. I am literally in the middle of doing my level 4 with Highfield. Any hints or tips?
Yes.
Read the book of 400 pages front to back 6 times.
The main thing, Duncan, is that you need to get the sample written questions and the 30-question multiple choice paper. I've got some I can email to you. But basically, the more you practice those, the better you'll get, because it's a 2.5-hour exam. There are 4 written questions, and there's one 30-minute multiple choice question with 30 questions on.
Yeah, I've got a really good trainer. He's given me 4 past papers and 360 multiple choice questions that have come up in the last 20 years.
Well, The thing is, if I gave you the level 4 multiple choice exam now, you'd be lucky to get 18 out of 30. So if you practice it, you can get up to the mid to high 20s. But you'll never get 30 out of 30 because you've only got, on a 30-minute paper, you've only got a minute per question. So you've got to really sort the wheat from, at level 4, you've got to sort the wheat from the chaff. And on the written questions, the best advice I could give you is that you read the question, read it again, and answer the bullet points, and go for the vocabulary. So if it says discuss, that means that you've got to have 2 points of view. If it says lists, then you just list A, B, C, D, E. And if it says list and describe, you've got to describe the process. And you only have, like, in a 2.5 hour exam, you're going to be writing, for each of those 4 questions, you're going to be writing solid for at least 25 minutes, because you've got to have some reading time. You're going to get written cramp, writer's cramp doing it. And it's so easy to go off a tangent on it. Even if you know the subject, you can answer the wrong question or get the right answers to the wrong question.
Yeah.
So you've got to be absolutely. And I think when I last looked, it was 7, 8, each question you get on the level 4, each written question is worth 17.5 marks each. So if I was sitting the exam, I'd go for the multiple choice first, get a good high score on that. Then you don't have to work so hard for the level 4 questions, for the written questions.
I got very lucky.
Piece of advice, which is my old boss gave me many years ago, which is only death is fatal. Don't worry about it too much. It may not be in your hands. You're quite capable of passing it, obviously, but you know what? It's only a short course. Take it on board. Enjoy the exam. It's a chance to show what you know, and I'm sure Highfield will do you proud and give you a certificate.
Yeah.
In all fairness, Duncan, the one that I think got me over the edge when I did it with Steve is I had a very, very lucky question where it was something along the lines of us act as an environmental health practitioner delivering a seminar, and I think I had to cover Campylobacter and various other things, just like pest controls, etc. So obviously you'd pass on pest controls from today, but then the third one was choose a subject of my own choosing, and then elaborate on that on what I would actually discuss. So I'd probably say that's your beneficial one, to find a question like that where it gives you the option to demonstrate the knowledge you feel comfortable in. The one area I probably didn't do so well in was HACCP at the time. I wish I was more confident in knowing the 12 logical steps and 7 principles.